For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alison Stockton and I am the founder of Vibrant Balanced Health, which is a company, a health and wellness company for women who are ready and looking for support in their health and wellness journey to encourage them to be the best version of themselves. So my background is I have been a personal trainer for 20 years. I am a wellness coach, a holistic wellness coach, certified with the New York School of Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I'm also eating psychology coach as well as personal trainer. So a fair few years under my belt and a few years of experience as well. So what led me to this journey was my own health issues, where I had eating disorders and triggered things like irritable bowel syndrome, Hashimoto's, which is an adrenal failure really, and also an autoimmune disease. So that led me onto a journey of how can I help women more, and how can I step up to really help them trigger. We can all go on Google, we can all find things that we want, but then it can really start to make us a little bit more worried about what is it that is going to happen to us. Bloating, and what do we do when we're bloating? What are our symptoms? What do we feel? Is it the fact that we just constantly have a tummy? Is it the fact that we just feel uncomfortable all the time? There's various degrees of what triggers what triggers that bloatedness, and what can we do to alleviate it. So having a bloating stomach is very, very different to gaining weight and having weight around our stomachs. That's two very different things. So obviously one is excess fat that we have and we store it there. We'll talk about that in a second. And the other one is something that's going on deep within. What is it within our bowels and our colon that's causing that bloatingness, and ultimately our gut? So they're two very different things to having excess weight and having the bloatingness. So if you've got any comments on there, please do drop them and I will try to go through them for you. So having irritable bowel myself, I know the discomforts that come with that, and it's a case that you're either of one or two situations, that you either can't get off the toilet or you cannot go to the toilet, and that creates even more bloating, which also creates more toxicity in the body. So it's like a catch-22. The more that you're bloated, you're eating foods that may not be serving you, you get more bloated, you get more lethargic, you get headaches, you feel a lack of energy, and so on and so forth. So, as I said, there's a difference between having extra weight around your tummy and also having these digestive issues which create the bloating. So usually bloating is temporary if it's something that's going on by air. So for example, if you drink fizzy drinks, sodas, and so on and so forth, sparkling water if it's mildly, I'm in Vienna here and they call it prickled, so I've got into the habit of calling it prickled water, but sparkling water is sometimes easier to absorb because it's not as carbonated. So if you're drinking a lot of fizzy drinks through the day, that can also build up air and create that gassiness within you. If you chew a lot of chewing gum, what happens is it starts to create saliva in your mouth. Your natural process of peristalsis is where you chew food and you start to secrete enzymes, and therefore that's what helps to break down the food. But if there's no food coming in when you're chewing gum and that gives you gas, then that's also another instigator and a sign that you need to leave that alone. So having a buildup of gas can really just make your stomach protrude and feel uncomfortable, and also make you feel like you're pregnant. Please do let me know if anybody has any of these signs where you're feeling the bloatiness in your stomach and you know that it is the gassiness and it's not the fact that you've gained extra weight. So there's also other symptoms that you would need to look at if you're feeling bloated on a regular basis. Obviously, the food that you eat affects you massively. And sorry to talk about it, but if you don't go to the toilet often enough, that can start to build up, as I've said, in your stomach, and that creates more gas, because basically your body it needs to regulate itself. It needs to secrete what it doesn't need. It needs to get rid of the toxins, and if you can't go to the bathroom, then this starts to store up and it becomes like a stagnant pond in your tummy. So you have what's called, I don't want to get too sciencey on here for you guys, but you have in your stomach your microbiome, and you have what's called villi, and the villi are, I do always do this with my fingers because it reminds me of seaweed going through in the sea. You know, if we didn't have seaweed and algae and everything in the sea and a current that flows in, the sea would be very stagnant, very dirty, very smelly, not very nice. So within our gut, these villi need our good bacteria, our bad bacteria. The microbiome needs to be kept healthy. It needs to have gut flora. And if we don't have that and we have a continuous build-up, then this gets stagnant, and that's what creates that gas as well, and that real windiness, which doesn't particularly smell nice, not for yourself or for others. But there's other symptoms that you need to think about as well. If you have got this bloating in your stomach, are you feeling a little bit feverish? Have you got rashes on your skin? Do you get hives? Do you get watery, itchy throat, or even dry eyes? All of these are a sign of allergic reaction, and that can cause that gas as well. So there are foods that you will be allergic to. As I've said, constipation and diarrhea, but also vomiting and nausea. If you feel gassy, but you have vomiting and nausea, that's also something to be aware of. And it's also looking at what happens when you do go to the bathroom. If you're struggling to go to the bathroom and your stomach is constantly bloated, but when you do, you see blood passing in those stools, and that's a sign that you really need to get a check for other symptoms as well. So please do be aware that if you're having that gut pain, but when you go to the bathroom there's other symptoms as well, and you're getting fever and you're getting headaches and so on and so forth, then you really should go to the doctors and get tested, but we'll talk about that in a second. So any pains in the groins or armpits that you feel brain fog and you feel very fatigued, trouble concentrating, irregular periods. As I said, blood in your stools could also lead to hemorrhoids, and if you're not having enough fibre-rich food in your body, or you're having too much fibre and you've got something that's like colitis or Crohn's disease, then that can also be triggering something else as well, which instigate the fatigue and that real lack of energy. So what I want you to think about as well is what causes the bloated stomach. So for me, it was absolutely, yes, irritable bowel. And what triggered it was over so many years of being anorexic and then bulimic and taking laxatives. When I speak to so many women, I realise more and more that that's something that we do, and we hide behind closed doors about it and only really open up many, many years later. But if that's something that you've done in your past, then that still has a direct effect on how you are even today, because your colon, your stomach has had a lot of damage, and it's how you're looking after it now to care for it in your later life. So if you have been prone to irritable bowel and there's been certain foods that trigger it, then you really need to be aware of what this is. Excuse me. So foods such as tomatoes can trigger it, anything with seeds, so even cucumber, strawberries for many because of the pits in them, kiwis, these things can trigger that IBS. Bread, wheat, gluten, milk, dairy products, they can also trigger that reaction, which again is not gaining you weight, it's that bloated in your tummy. Two very different things. So what I have come to understand from the way that we digest our food is, there was a very old-fashioned way of eating your meal and then having fruit afterwards. And what happens is a lot of women particularly can't tolerate that. So if you have a healthy meal and then you follow that through with acidic fruits, that can sometimes trigger that reaction in your gut as well, because it's almost like a fermentation process. So obviously fruit has fiber in it, it also has sugars in it, so that starts to build up on top of the food. So you've got your food and your fruit, any liquids that's in there as well, and the fiber rich fruit isn't able to break down quick enough, so it can cause acidity, and then this food that's here can't digest. This is the peristalsis process again, coming down through your gut. So when we go through peristalsis, we all have cells through our gut, And basically what happens is when we chew the food comes down into that digestive tract, and on a cellular level we take away whether we need protein, whether we need fiber, whether we need carbohydrates, so on and so forth. But sometimes it just gets all blocked. So I hope that makes sense to you without me going too sciencey. So the belly bloat itself is that problem with digestion. So you need to be really clear about how you're looking after your gut, and are you being healthy with your gut? Are you really nurturing it? Are you drinking enough water? Are there other things that are aggravating it? For example, coffee is fabulous for some people, and it has lots of antioxidants, and it has healing benefits. It's also been proven that if you drink 3 to 4 cups of coffee a day, that you can protect yourself against throat and mouth cancer. But also, one person's food is another person's poison. So if coffee for you particularly is aggravating your stomach, causes you to bloat, gives you this discomfort, then try eliminating that for a period of time and see how you feel. Also, it can be just the quality. If you are a coffee drinker, if the quality is really poor, then that can trigger the bloating as well. And if you have coffee with milk, again, as I said, be aware of the dairy that you're eating if your body is not able to break it down. We're not all able to break it down. So basically, for many people, the cause of excessive gas in the intestines and in the gut really does come down to poor protein digestion, not enough fiber or over-rich fiber foods that your body's not able to deal with. It could be too much fizzy drinks, carbonated drinks, and sugars. Too much sugar, refined sugar in the body increases inflammation, and obviously inflammation in all parts of the body, not just on a muscular level but also on a cellular level, so in your gut. If you are a sugar addict and you feel inflamed and you feel in pain and you feel tired and you feel lethargic, then that can also be something that's going on in your gut, because it then imbalances all of the gut bacteria, as I've said, the microbiome and the gut flora. So it's about how can we really start to put these together and work through it so that you're at your healthiest state with everything that you can be. Remember, your gut bloat is very different to if you have excess weight around there to lose, or if you have you need to tone your stomach from baby weight. Two very, very different things. So be mindful and look out for, have I got a digestive disorder? Is it affected by the foods that I'm choosing to eat that really are not serving me and making me feel unwell? If you had a sick child or a sick friend and you knew that the foods that they were eating were making them sick, you would absolutely encourage them to stop eating that and to make changes, and to make changes sooner rather than later. Because as I said, if you are inflamed, if you continue in that way, your whole body becomes inflamed, which can come and create other disease. So diseases like fibromyalgia, autoimmune diseases, as I've said, autoimmune diseases, there are over 110. There is a plethora of autoimmune diseases, which is usually caused and triggered by the foods that we eat. So be mindful of thinking about the digestive disorders, fluid retention. Am I not drinking enough water, or I'm drinking water but I'm holding it, I'm not able to flush my body? This goes down to how are you going to the bathroom? Are you sweating? Are you working out? Are you moving your body? That allows us to excrete toxins in our body, which then enables our digestive tract and the peristalsis. I keep going on about this, it's like a pump going through your colon. Think about that when you move your body. You rest and digest, but also move to help with the lymphatic drainage to help all of that come through. Obviously, do you have an infection in your gut? Is it the fact that you've been eating so much of the wrong thing for you that you've actually got an infection in there? I'm going to give you an example that one of my clients, excuse me, when we first started working together, wasn't going to the bathroom for anything up to 6 days. You can imagine the discomfort, the pain. Also, you start to secrete smells that are not very nice because you're not able to get rid of what you need to get rid of. So we managed to turn that around and started to eat more fiber-rich foods. Now, when I say fiber, things like greens, so folate can be, if you think about folate, and foliage. That's what we need to have on a daily basis: spinach, greens, chard, rocket even. Think about the digestive disorders that I've already mentioned, like IBS. It's also called IBD, so it's irritable bowel syndrome. It's also known as irritable bowel disorder, so they've changed that to that now. Ulcerative colitis, again, as I've said, colitis is something that's an inflammatory disease which happens through the colon and in the gut, so we need to be aware of that. Celiac disease also can create, celiac disease also, again, this is very, very much, celiac is gluten and grain free completely. So it takes a lot of tests, and sometimes tests go not the right way because they don't necessarily test for the right things. They don't necessarily test for the antibodies. They might test you for a certain food groups, but they don't test you all of the time, and it could be that you need to be tested over a period of 3 months because your blood levels will be different. Have you fasted? Have you not fasted? When was the food in your body? So on and so forth. So they're things that you need to look out for as well. If you're prescribed medications for certain issues that you have with a disease in the colon, that can also affect the gut microbiome and the gut flora, so therefore you are instigating even more inflammation. So it's how do you treat these things on a holistic basis? Now, I'm not saying at any point should anybody stop taking medications if they're prescribed, but it's finding the solutions and finding the alternatives that you can really start to work through to have the best experience of life and feel well and have that well-being feeling, rather than thinking I've got to have a tablet. Because a lot of the time what people tend to do, and I'm not saying this is what you do, but a lot of the time people take a tablet and they use it as a plaster. So it's like, well, it's okay, I can eat that or I can drink that because I have this medication and I'm all good to go. But it doesn't work that way. Again, I say to you, if one person's poison is another person's food, and one person's food is another person's poison. So if you're just masking it with a tablet and still having things that your body really is trying to reject, then you need to take a complete strip back and see what it is that your body really does need and remove what it does not need. And sometimes that's hard, really hard for people to say, do you know what? Can't live without a glass of wine, can't live without a cup of coffee. If your health and wellness depends on it, then we can find alternatives for that at any given stage. There is always a solution. And many people think that, I speak with people who have got an ulcer, for example, an acid reflux, and they're astounded when I say, okay, we need to increase your lemons and we need to increase your apple cider vinegar, and they're like, but that's acidic. But what happens is, usually if you have a reflux, this is not talking about bloating so much, but it's also affecting you, that if you have an acid reflux or if you have those kind of reactions, it's normally an acid reflux is because you haven't got enough healthy bile in your stomach to enable you to digest your food. So actually having apple cider vinegar on a regular basis allows you to calm it all down and to put probiotics into your gut without having to take dairy, and also helps you to line that stomach and rebuild the healthy bile. So hope that made sense to you. But as I said, just be aware as well of fluid retention, because if you have fluid retention and you're bloating, there could be an abdominal infection there, and it could be related to something going on with your liver. So that's something that really needs to be checked. Bloating and water retention, you need to get the liver checked out as well. That can also come into the eyes. You change the colour of your eyes. As we know, the liver is affected and the kidneys affected through your eyes. And also, have you lost weight? Have you lost weight unintentionally but still feel this illness and still feel bloated? You can still be skinny and bloated. You can still be larger and bloated. We just need to make sure that it's the fact that your gut is the healthy part of this. And if you do have this bloatingness in your stomach, I really do highly recommend that you drink and you stay hydrated, especially if you're prone to eating salty foods. This will affect the water retention as well. So drink plenty of water. Even put the lemon in the hot water, warm water, however you want to take it. Stay hydrated and try and help with your alkalinity in your body. If you are drinking lemon and water, I suggest you also drink it through a metal straw or glass straw, because otherwise it will affect the enamel on your teeth, and then you don't want to have sensitive teeth on top of everything else as well. Be mindful of the constipation. How long does it happen for? How regular are you going to the bathroom? And really do be mindful about your food allergies. You know, some people are very, very fortunate, can get away with eating whatever they like and it doesn't affect them. But if you do, and we're not everybody, everybody's different, everybody's unique. You will never have one case the same of Hashimoto's, you'll never have one case the same of IBS, you will never have one case the same of diverticulitis or colitis or Crohn's disease or anything, because we're all so different. The symptoms may be similar, but it's what is the cause. That's what we need to focus on. What is the cause that's triggered it? A lot of these things are also triggered by PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. So it doesn't mean that it's just something that's appeared. It doesn't mean that's something that's genetic. It could be a stress release, a hormone release that has triggered that as well. So you want to be mindful of the food allergies, and a FODMAP. They miss out. I know a FODMAP is a great way to do this. So basically you miss out pasta, breads, cereals, and you only really focus on eating good carbohydrates like root vegetables, and having roasted veg and sweet potatoes instead of the white potatoes, eating maybe no grains as well to eliminate all of that, and definitely no refined sugars. That would be where you would go on an elimination diet. Things like apples as well can be very acidic if you have bloatingness. It took me many, many years to understand that if I had an apple after a meal, that would trigger my IBS. Again, as I said earlier on in the video, if you're eating too much fiber after you've eaten food, then that can sometimes trigger. I mean, there's pectins in apples. They're very, very good for you. So a flip around that is to have your fruits and maybe even your veggies in the morning. You know, make a really healthy smoothie, put some fruits in it, put some greens in it, and try it that way, so you're not having the fruits later on in the day to create that build-up in your gut. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, known as SIBO. Again, this is something that you might have the bacterial overgrowth of not the good and not the bad, just either nothing or too much of one or the other. So be mindful of that as well. Do be careful of the any infections that you might have on there, and just be mindful of any hormonal changes as well. So if you've got hormonal changes and you've got PMS, and it gets even worse when you have a period, and those digestive issues just really, really flare up. It could also be something that is connected with fibroids, so that can become even worse. Polycystic ovaries, PCOS, that can also be affected by the food you eat, and that can cause bloating. So can we disassociate? Have we got bloating in the gut? Have we got bloating in our ovaries and our area that is our reproductive system, or is it our gut ourselves? So I hope that's really helped. I don't want to go on and confuse too much because you're all individual, and it's a very generic very generic. It's not specific for you, because everybody will have different symptoms, everybody will have different causes. You may have a similar symptom, but they will be different as well. So if you want to lose the bloat without just covering it up, then please do drop me a comment.